that we've had. Thank you that we've come to another weekend safely. We ask, Father, that tonight, once again, that in this place, Lord, you would bless us, not only through your servant, Dr. Ramirez, but with your presence. Father, give us wisdom. Speak to us, Lord, of the things that pertain to life and godliness. We ask that you be with Dr. Ramirez as he leads out again, Father. Give him the words and bring the thoughts to his mind, that he may adequately share it with us. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, good evening. Let me fix here the colors. This is a photo that I took of Topsham, Maine. You know, Sister White used to live there. Very pretty place. And this is another one I took of Hamburg, Pennsylvania. You know, this is where I live. And just a reminder, this is the research I do is found there on that ResearchGate page. I'm going to be citing a few of my tweets, so you can go ahead and find those tweets there, Eddie RD MD. In fact, many of the studies that I actually cite, most of them, the majority of them, you actually find them there if you search for that Twitter handle. So let's start with a fascinating topic tonight about internal clocks, circadian rhythms, and circa-septum rhythms. The world that we live in is a fascinating world. And if you go and see, for example, the planets in our solar system, you will see that the planets have certain rhythms. In fact, they're actually predictable rhythms. That's the reason why you can take a rocket and arrive to Mars and so forth, because you can predict, you know, the planet is here and it will be here, you know, in so many months and so forth. So it is the world that we live in. You know, when you study the individual planets, planets also have their rhythms. And if you analyze our weather also has patterns. There's times when it's cold, there's times when it's warm, and so forth. So in the same way, we have cycles in our DNA encoded. Now, we know that food has a big impact on our health. Now we know that food has an impact in our genes. Remember when we were talking about the epigenetics at the very beginning? That's what is called the nutrigenomics. You know, what specifically nutrients have an impact at the level of the genes. But we're learning that there's something even beyond that. It's not only what you eat, but when you eat it that has a big impact on your health. And every single one of us has internal clocks. In fact, you could even tell me, I mean, is there a time of the day when you're hungry? Yes. Is there a time of the day when you're not hungry? Is there a time of the day when you feel sleepy? Is there a time of the day when you don't feel sleepy? Is there a time of the day when you feel energetic? Is there a part of the day when you don't feel that energetic? Is there a time of the day when your mind is more ready for work? Is there a time of the day when your mind is not ready to work? See, all these things are dictated by those internal rhythms. So the way the system works, in the middle of our brain, there's an area there called the hypothalamus. And we have clocks in every organ in our body. So, just like in your home, if you have like 8 clocks in your home, sooner or later, your clocks are going to become desynchronized, yes or no? Especially if they're the battery type. You know, one is going to go faster, the other one is going to go slower, and so forth. So how do you solve that challenge? How do you fix that problem? You have a clock that you trust, and based on that clock, you synchronize every clock in your house, yes or no? In the same way, it happens in our bodies. Our organs start every day to become desynchronized, and therefore they need a master clock. That master clock is found in the hypothalamus, and that synchronization needs to happen continually for things to work better. And that master clock gets clues about the timing by when we eat, when we don't eat, when we expose ourselves to bright light, when we are in darkness, what we're eating, and all these things have an impact at these internal clocks. So we know very well that multiple health problems can arise if we don't respect those internal clocks. And there's plenty of research like this one, very interesting study. Notice that there's certain times of the day that you are the best at doing those things. And there's multiple functions in the body that vary depending on the day. Like this interesting study was studying the shift workers, how those shift workers increase their risk for metabolic problems. In fact, we know that the reproduction, the ability to reproduce, some people that work shift works, is actually impaired, and especially because of the changing on the timing on the meals and so forth. Also, this very interesting study was showing that when you're switching shifts, the days that you're starting to shift, your pancreas is having a hard time adapting to the new time of eating and so forth. So we know that there are internal rhythms in our bodies, and those rhythms are called, among other ones, circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm comes from the Latin, from the word circa, which means about, and for the word dia. If you learn Spanish, you learn buenos dias, dias day. So circadian, about a day. It's a cycle of about a day that we have in our body. And one of the key hormones with those internal rhythms is a hormone by the name of melatonin. This melatonin has all kinds of beneficial effects in your body, from a stress reliever, helps control the blood pressure, helps with stress, helps fight cancer in your body, helps you deal with anxiety, helps you sleep deeply. It's the hormone that repairs your body at night. In fact, I have a viral video about it. That video has 2.8 million views about it. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's in Spanish. But you can put the little thing there that translates the subtitles, if you want to understand what the video is about. And the thing is that melatonin is what I call an optional blessing. Everybody in the evening, their body is ready to secrete that melatonin. But you choose if you want it or not. How do you choose? Well, if you eat too late, you're going to ruin your melatonin of the night. If you don't go to bed early in the evening, you're going to ruin your melatonin of the light. If you're exposing yourself to blue light before you go to bed, you're going to ruin your melatonin of the night. And if you see in this graphic, most of the melatonin is secreted early in the evening. So if you don't go to bed early in the evening, you're going to miss most of that melatonin of the night. Here you can see how also how long you sleep has an impact. This study just came out just a few days ago, documenting that people that sleep less than 6 hours a night are at very increased risk for type 2 diabetes because of that desynchronization that takes place on your internal clocks. In fact, we know that those people that call themselves night owls, they happen to have more mental health problems. And that happens because of the desynchronization that takes place over and over. In fact, there was a very interesting study that was done. They took those night owls, they took away their cell phones and electronics, and they put them to do camping. Guess what happened? Every single one of those night owls became morning people. Because sunlight helps you with that synchronization of those rhythms. You know, if you don't have your cell phone and so forth, and they send you camping, I mean, what are you going to do at night? You know, you just talk a little bit there with somebody around the fire, and then you go to bed. And then, because how thin tents are, once the sun goes up, well, you awaken. You know, there's no other choice. You know, it's too bright and so forth. And that brightness helps with that synchronization. This topic is so important, they gave the Nobel Prize to these people. And it's very well documented how disturbing those body clocks impairs your mental health. That's why, remember, in the 10-hit hypothesis, when we were talking about depression, there was one factor there that was called what? Anybody remembers? Circadian rhythm as one of the major causes of depression. Now, this is a fascinating study. In this study, it was documented that healthy people have higher levels of melatonin. If you are diabetic, you actually cut down by about half your melatonin. You think that's good? No, because it's going to start aging you faster. In fact, if your diabetes is out of control, you don't control well your diabetes, it's actually even worse, your level of melatonin each night. So, the good news is that we can do something about it. I've been sharing this clinical case of this patient that had diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. He was taking 3 medications, and how in a matter of a year and a half, by following the plant-based diet, the exercise, the rest, the synchronization, and so forth, he was able to reverse his diabetes. He is no longer diabetic. He is no longer hypertensive. He is no longer obese. Good or bad? Good, isn't it? This is exactly what this message causes. And I have documented that in multiple studies. There's another one of my studies showing how that control of glucose takes place actually quite fast as the people changes their lifestyle. And this other one, how people with high blood pressure, in a matter of 18 days, 93% of those patients, we had to either stop their medication or decrease it dramatically because their blood pressure starts to improve quite fast. So These studies, you can find them there on that ResearchGate page, and many, many more than 165 studies there in the scientific literature that I have been involved with. So if diabetes disturbs melatonin, what about diabetes on the clock genes? And this is a fascinating study also. It was shown that people with diabetes start to disturb their body clocks. And if you disturb your body clocks, the activation of those body clocks, it means your body is going to start getting out of synchronization much easier. Don't miss the second part of the night. That's when we're going to be dealing with more detail about diabetes. But that's one of the reasons why if you don't deal with your diabetes, it's going to literally shorten your life by multiple years, more than a decade. And so that's why it's dangerous not to start making those lifestyle changes ASAP. And there's multiple resources, by the way. In fact, if you're diabetic, I suggest you Google the words Diabetes Undone. That is an excellent program. It's a small little videos that you follow, and it's going to teach you everything that you need to know to put that diabetes on remission. I don't sell it, I don't make a single penny out of it, but I know it's an excellent program. When they did the program in Spanish, they actually invited me to be the speaker, but because of my schedule, I was not able to. So it's available also in Spanish, that program. Now, another cycle that we have in our bodies is a cycle of 7 days. And everybody has that cycle. Let's go and explore that 7-day cycle. See, that cycle, it's called the circa septum, okay? And it's a cycle of 7 days that every living thing has. The circa septum, or about weekly rhythms, are one of the major surprises turned up by modern chronobiology. 15 years ago, few scientists would have expected that a 7-day biological cycle would prove so widespread and so long established in the living world. From the most microscopic plant in nature to the biggest whales, every one of us also has a 7-day cycle. When this algae is subjected to artificial schedules of alternating light and dark span of varying length over many days, the single intact cell is somehow able to translate all that manipulation of light and darkness into the measurement of a 7-day week. And the Sabbath day is something that is communicated in Exodus 20. And please notice the way that it says there. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your what is there? Nor your cattle. Anybody have seen the cows coming to church? See, it's because this goes beyond a religious principle. This is actually a physiological principle. As you need the night, every single night to sleep in order to have that regeneration and so forth, every living thing needs this 7-day cycle. So notice this, at first glance, it might seem that the weekly rhythms develop in response to the 7-day week imposed by human culture thousands of years ago. However, this theory doesn't hold once you realize that plants, Insects and animals and other humans have weekly cycles, those 7-day cycles. Biology, therefore, not culture, is probably at the source of our 7-day week. So those 7-day cycles are programmed inside of us. In fact, it's interesting, if you start messing around with the week and so forth, you get yourself in trouble. For example, it's like trying to sleep every day in the day. It doesn't work very well, isn't it? Even if you try, even if you do this and that, it doesn't work very well. There's a reason why there are these 7-day cycles. So why is this 7 days so special? Well, you can go and study about it. Genesis 2:3, then God blessed what? The 7th day and sanctified it, because he rested from all his work which God has created and made. So, God put a special blessing on that day. That's the reason why that day is so special. Now, what's a blessing? You and I use the blessing in a certain context. For example, when we see each other and we're going to say bye, I may say, hey, God bless you. What does it mean? Well, it means may you have work. May your children don't give you too many headaches. May you be able to provide for your household and so forth. And it has this type of implications when you and I tell each other, God bless you. But is the Sabbath day, does it have work? Is the Sabbath day, do they have children? The Sabbath day, does it have work? Not necessarily, isn't it? So the context that you and I are using that word blessing may not necessarily translate that like that. So something that you can do if you have questions about the context of certain words in the Bible is to let the Bible interpret itself. So if we want to know what blessing means in the Bible, we need to go and look for the word blessing. What is the first blessing of the Bible? To whom did God give the first blessing? Anybody? To man? Not necessarily. It actually gave it to the animals. Genesis 1:21, so God created the great creatures and every living thing that moves, and the birds and so forth. And then in verse 22, and God blessed them, saying, notice the context, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. That's the first blessing that God gives. Who does he give the second blessing? Now you don't want to say, isn't it? Yes, this one goes to Adam and Eve. And verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created man, male and female. He created them. Then what says there? God blessed them. And then what says afterwards? And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Can you start to see a little pattern there? Every time God blesses, there's something there in the context afterwards. Next blessing of the Bible, who does it go to? Goes to Noah, verse 9, chapter 9, verse 1. So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, what? Can you see the pattern here? God is blessing and then be fruitful and multiply. What's inside of us that is like constantly or very often multiplying? Anybody knows? The human cell. Human cells are constantly in multiplication, many of them, because of their function. For example, in your mouth, every time you eat, you scrape a bunch of your cells of your mouth, and new ones need to take its place. in your intestine, as the food is traveling in your intestine, is scraping the intestine. It's causing, multiple cells to be lost. They need to multiply. If not, you get a hole there. Your skin. In fact, do you know that most of the dust that you have in your house, it's actually your skin cells? The more people that live in a house, the more you need to be cleaning, because they are constantly shedding those dead cells all over the body. Now, there are 274 different types of cells. Some of them multiply very fast. Some multiply very, very slow. And these cells, in order to continue with the line, they need to multiply. And when you multiply the cells, you also need to multiply the DNA. Now, just like you and I, when we make copies of things by hand, sooner or later we make mistakes. And that is, something that happens at the level of the cells. Now, how much multiplication takes place regarding the DNA? So the cell multiplies and needs an exact copy of the DNA. So in the DNA, there are 24,000 genes. Remember when we were talking about the epigenetics? 24,000 recipes, remember? That's how many recipes are there. And how many pairs? Every cell has 30,000 million pairs of DNA. That's how much reparation every cell needs every time that multiplies. So the mathematics is 24,000 multiplied by 30,000 million pairs. Plus, not only the multiplication, but the way we live sometimes introduces errors in our DNA. Eating too much, working too much, not sleeping enough, being too much stress, getting angry. All these things generate oxygen-free radicals that damage your DNA. And we can actually predict. See, at each successive generation, your children are going to have 60 mutations in their DNA. And their children are going to have another 60. So that's why we actually know we're not like millions and millions of years ago and so forth, because the DNA would be completely useless. If you multiply that 60 mutations that happen at each generation by millions and millions, it wouldn't work whatsoever, our DNA. In fact, we can actually predict how old is our DNA based on how many mistakes are introduced at each generation. And that's actually the reason why, if you study the Bible, you will see that at the very, very beginning, brothers and sisters could get married, cousins could get married, because both of them had very close to perfect DNA at the beginning. As the mutations started to be introduced in the DNA, that meant that we had to make some changes. And these mutations actually cause the necessity for you and I to marry somebody very different, because my family is going to carry many of those mutations. Your family also is going to carry mutations, but the odds that we have the same mistake in the same place is very low. Therefore, the DNA that I have that doesn't have the mistakes compared to the DNA that you have that has the mistakes, that makes a big difference. So that's why the need of having this type of approach. And this reparation of the genes that needs to take place happens because these changes are happening all the time. Give me just one little second while I fix this one. And these mistakes, you need to repair them, because if not, the body cannot function properly. Second, here, very good. And right here. Can you guys check the projector in the back? This projector is stuck. I don't know if he's hearing me. Can somebody tell him? He's on the computer. Yeah, okay, perfect. Can you put me back again, my projector? Something cycled there. So then, to keep the Sabbath means to receive that blessing, to receive that power. So it's like a car that has problems. What do you do when your car has problems? If your car starts having an ugly noise, what do? You go to who? You go to the mechanic. You go to the shop. So you arrive at the shop and you tell the mechanic, hey, mechanic, listen to my car. It has a very ugly noise. And what does the mechanic tell you? Turn off the car. Yes or no? You turn off the car, then the mechanic can put his hands and start the process of repairing the car. In the same way, you need to turn off your car for your DNA to start that reparation process. Notice this fascinating verse here in this interchange with Jesus and the Pharisees. They were accusing Jesus that he was healing people on the Sabbath day, and they didn't like that. John 5:15, then the man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which had made him whole, and therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him, because he had done these things when? On the Sabbath day. But notice the answer of Jesus. John 5:17, but Jesus answered them, this exchange is happening on the Sabbath. My Father is working, therefore what? I'm working. So while you are resting, God is working. What is he doing? Repairing your DNA. Now, there's animals that keep the Sabbath. There's many of them among the list. You have this bee-like creature. They actually generate honey and so forth. Doesn't have a stinger, called the melipona. There's also these beavers. There's this excellent documentary called The 7-Day Beavers, and talks about these beavers, how this doctor study them, and they actually don't work on Sabbath and so forth. So the body has multiple functions that happen on a cyclical basis. And the body has cycles. So these cycles are cycles of stress and rest. So these cycles of rest and stress is something that every single one of us has. The way they did the study, they took blood samples of people and they measured the stress levels. And there was clearly a rhythm there, up and down. And look what it says there in the paper when they published the results. This is a secular university paper. It appears that there's a strong weekly rhythm from day-to-day mood. This pattern shows a peak around when? Friday night. What happens on Friday night? Anybody knows? That's when the Sabbath starts. And Saturday, and a throat around Monday or Tuesday. So every single one of us on Friday night, our body is getting ready to rest on the Sabbath day. It is that optional blessing like the melatonin. If you go to sleep, you're going to receive your melatonin in the night. If you rest on the Sabbath day, you're going to receive that special blessing on the Sabbath day. Even secular newspapers are reporting these type of things. This is the Washington Post, just a secular newspaper in America. Sabbath, the surprising benefits of doing nothing. Why reviving a 2,600-year-old spiritual practice made my life better, said this person. So he started keeping the Sabbath and started receiving that blessing. It's like if you sleep your 7-8 hours, how do you feel? You feel great, isn't it? In the same way, keeping the Sabbath actually is very good for your health. There's another one from the New York Times. Again, this is just a secular newspaper in America. Sabbath, a time of regeneration and healing. Again, you find all of those on my Twitter and so forth. So, notice this interesting study in Israel. They found out that the more people died in Israel not on Sabbath. The Sabbath is the day that the least amount of people die on Israel. If you've ever been to Israel, I've been there a few times. Sabbath day, that's an official holiday. Nobody works on Sabbath in Israel. This other study, we hypothesize the 7-day time structure of human beings is endogenous, is inside of us in origin. A hypothesis that has been affirmed by a wide array of evidence. We also hypothesize there are representative, at least in part, of biological requirements for rest and repair 1 day each 7 days. You are designed to have a rest 1 day out of the 7. Now some people say, well, doctor, can I choose the day? I want to rest on Monday, I want to rest on Tuesday. Well, it's like going to sleep, but is it the same if you go to sleep at 9 a.m., go to sleep at 2 p.m., or go to sleep or the time that you are supposed to sleep, which is at 9:30 or 10 p.m.? There's a big difference, isn't it? So it's not like you can just pick and choose. I want this day, I want this other day. There's a day that was designed for resting, and now you know why, because he has a special blessing that day. Notice this historian. This is a historian from the first century, Jewish historian, and it's a very good book, the book Against Appian. Flavius Josephus is called as historian. I'm quoting his book. The masses have long since shown a keen desire to adopt our religious observances. And there is not one city, Greek or barbarian, nor a single nation to which our custom of abstaining from work on the 7th day has not spread. It is the natural thing to do to rest on the 7th day, on Saturday. And the people around Israel started resting on that day because it's the natural thing to do. So we have a 24-hour internal clock inside of us called the circadian. There is the circa monthly, and there is the circa annual. Now, notice that those 3 cycles are astronomically related. For example, what's the year, astronomically speaking? Planet Earth goes around the sun. What's the month? Moon goes around the earth. What's the day? The earth goes around its axis 1 time. What's the 7th day? Anyone knows? Please speak, because you're probably going to get the Nobel Prize. We don't know what's the 7th day. Why 7 days? See, they have tried, especially the communists. The communists thought, okay, 7 days, that's something religious and so forth in origin. Let's mess around. Let's make the week 5 days. You can go on to the internet and find this information. I'm not making this up. People started getting sick. The production started tanking and so forth. These guys have to scrape their plants and bring back again the 7-day week, because we are designed to rest 1 day out of that 7 days. So that's why if you read the language of Isaiah 58, there's lots of words there for pleasure. See, in the study of the 7 days that I was showing you, it was shown that the day with the least stress, therefore the most pleasurable day of the week, happens to be the Sabbath day. In fact, even the timing of the wedding of Adam and Eve, their honeymoon was on Friday night, because it's the most pleasurable day of the week. And you can see this pleasure language here. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure, notice the word pleasure there, on my holy day, and call it Sabbath, a delight, pleasure, a holy day of the Lord honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words. Then you shall what? Delight, pleasure yourself in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in the high hills of the earth and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father. The mouth of the Lord has spoken it. So, as the saying says, if we do not allow a rhythm of rest in our daily lives, illness becomes our Sabbath. So when you are ill, isn't it, you cannot work and so forth. So I think it's a better idea, isn't it, to start resting on that designated time. If not, illness will come and claim his rest. So we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll continue with our second part of our seminar.
So just a reminder that there's refreshments and snacks just out the back, and stretch your legs and for you to go to the bathroom as well. And we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Thank you.